Hello, sports fans. Welcome to Super Sports Central. Today, we're going to be going over how I would approach the offseason if I were general manager of the Cincinnati Bengals. So, the Bengals, they have an interesting offseason approaching because overall they have a pretty good team, but they have a lot of key players who are set to become free agents. And those players are wide receivers T. Higgins and Tyler Boyd, defensive tackle DJ Reader, cornerback Cheeto Awuzie, offensive lineman Jonah Williams, tight ends Irv Smith Jr. and Tanner Hudson, and finally backup quarterback Jake Brown. Now, obviously, there's a lot of really good players on that list, and there's definitely some players the Bengals should look to try to re-sign. The first is maybe their biggest name free agent, that is wide receiver T. Higgins. So there's definitely a chance the Bengals franchise tag him and try to keep him around, but to me, it seems like T. Higgins won't be a Bengal moving forward. Now, I have heard of the possibility of the Bengals tagging T. Higgins and then trading him, so I'm going to say that makes the most sense for the Bengals to do because I just don't think he's going to be a Bengal next season, and at least we'll be getting something back in return for him. So that's what I would do if I'm the Bengals general manager. Franchise tag T. Higgins and then look for a trade partner. Now, obviously, the most likely landing spot is the Carolina Panthers, but trade compensation gets very interesting because T. Higgins is likely worth a first round pick, or at the very least, an extremely high day two pick. Now, the Panthers obviously don't have their first round pick and likely won't want to give up any future firsts. And with the Panthers' first pick being at 33 overall, do they really want to give that up? But that's the trade we're going to make. We're going to send T. Higgins to the Carolina Panthers, and in return, we will get a second round pick, which is 33 overall this year, and a fifth round pick next year. And while I'm sure the Bengals would love to have T. Higgins back, I could definitely see the possibility of them just franchise tagging him, not trading him. But to me, it seems unlikely that they'll get a long term deal done. The next free agent is DJ Reader, their defensive tackle. So DJ Reader is a player who's been great for the Bengals. He is an incredible run stuffer and a player I think the Bengals should definitely look to re-sign. Now, Reader is getting older as he'll be 30 by the start of next season, and he's also coming off a torn quad. But despite the age and injury, I would still just re-sign DJ Reader if I'm the Bengals, and his potential contract would be somewhere in the 3-year, $45 million range, but he's a player I would definitely try to re-sign. Next key free agent is cornerback Cheeto Awuzie. So he's another good player on an expiring contract for the Bengals. He'll be 29 at the start of next season, and he's coming off a good season, returning from a torn ACL where he had 59 tackles and 6 passes defended. Now, if I'm the Bengals, he's another one I'm going to try to bring back, and a potential contract for him would be 2 years for $18 million. He's been good for the Bengals, plus he provides some experience to the secondary that is mostly pretty young. Next free agent we have is Tyler Boyd. So he's another good receiver that's a free agent for the Bengals. I would like to bring Tyler Boyd back if I'm general manager, especially after not extending T. Higgins. But to me, it also seems like Tyler Boyd won't be a Bengal moving forward, so I would say let him walk, although I would try to at least bring him back, especially if T. Higgins isn't on the team long term. Moving on to the two tight ends, Tanner Hudson and Irv Smith Jr. I would try to bring one of them back. If I'm the Bengals, that's going to be Tanner Hudson. He was the most productive of any tight end with 352 yards and a touchdown. So I would re-sign Tanner Hudson, and his contract would be pretty cheap. And finally, briefly touching on backup quarterback Jake Browning. He was good for the Bengals, replacing Joe Burrow after he got hurt, and I would definitely look to keep him around. He proved to be one of the better backup quarterbacks in the NFL. Now, before we get into free agency and the draft, there is some team needs we should go over. And there isn't a ton of needs for the Bengals, but there is definitely a few positions they can upgrade. The first being offensive line, more specifically right tackle, after letting Jonah Williams walk, they'll be in need of a right tackle, a position that they've needed for quite some time now. The next position of need is wide receiver. After trading T. Higgins and not re-signing Tyler Boyd, the Bengals would definitely be in need of another wide receiver outside of Jamar Chase. Corner is another need for the Bengals. They could use another corner, but it isn't their biggest need. And the final two also aren't major needs, but they could use an upgrade at the position. The first is running back because there's a chance that they release Joe Mixon to create more cap space. And the other is tight end. And while I did say I would re-sign Tanner Hudson because I think he is a solid tight end, but he's definitely not a top 5 tight end in the NFL, so they could definitely look for an upgrade at the tight end position. Moving on to free agency. So after re-signing some of those players I talked about before, the Bengals will still have about $32 million in cap space this offseason. But as far as a list of free agent targets goes for the Bengals, it's really tough for me to put together a list because it really depends on which upcoming free agents they're able to re-sign. For example, if they're able to bring back DJ Reader, then they won't be looking to sign a defensive tackle like Christian Wilkins, Justin Madubuike, or Leonard Williams. But the first player I would try to target from the Bengals is tight end Dalton Schultz. He is likely the best free agent tight end. Now, I don't think he leaves Houston, but it doesn't hurt to try to get him. But as far as free agency goes, it really just depends on who the Bengals are able to re-sign. And as long as they're able to re-sign most of their players from this past season, I don't expect them to be super active pursuing other available players. And finally, moving on to the draft for the Bengals and what I would do in the first 3 rounds. So the Bengals, they have 4 picks on the first 2 days of the 2024 draft, the first of which is pick number 18. And here with this pick from the Bengals, I'm going to try to address the need of right tackle. And with that in mind, there's 4 ways they can go with this pick, depending on who's available. They can go with either J.C. Latham from Alabama, Tawis Fuaga from Oregon State, Amarius Mims from Georgia, or Tyro Guyton from Oklahoma. And I'm going to say the Bengals end up drafting Tyro Guyton in this spot because J.C. Latham and Tawis Fuaga are probably better players, although I don't think they make it to 18th overall. So Tyro Guyton is the pick from Oklahoma, and he is then your right tackle for the Bengals. The next pick is number 33 overall. That is from our mock trade from the Panthers that I talked about at the beginning of this video. And with this pick, the Bengals should definitely look wide receiver. And this is a good receiver class. Everyone talks about the top 3 receivers, Marvin Harrison Jr., Rome Odunze, and Malik Neighbors. But this is overall a really good receiver class, and the Bengals, they have a lot of options here at 33. The first option is Keon Coleman, and he is going to be my choice unless he's unavailable. And if Coleman's unavailable, then I'd go with Ladd McConkey from Georgia. But Keon Coleman is my first choice here at 33. 49th overall, I would go with edge rusher Darius Robinson from Missouri. And finally, 80th overall, I would take Texas defensive tackle Devondre Sweat, who's an excellent run stuffer. But that is how I would approach the offseason as general manager of the Cincinnati Bengals. I'm not a Bengals fan, so Bengals fans will let me know how I did in the comments. And if you're not a Bengals fan, let me know what your thoughts are on how the Bengals would approach the offseason. But that's all for this video. Thank you guys for watching. Make sure to like, subscribe, comment, turn notifications so I do my best to post as often as possible. And I will see you in the next video.